Our stamp tool will grab anything. Let's say that we want this eye here. I'll use the option to select what I want to borrow from, and then wherever I put that, it's going to sample everything that I then draw over. So you can see how it's borrowing exactly pixel by pixel where I want. Anyway, this used to be the only way that we could heal stuff, is we would come into an area next to it, and then we would borrow that, right? But now with the heal brush tool, it does a better job of anticipating what pixels need to be there. Anyway, we will back up because that's creepy. All right. That's the stamp tool. And then our eraser tool is the opposite of a brush tool. Eraser tool will just take away pixels like a brush, but it'll take them away. I don't use it ever anymore because I use masks, and if I brush black, it's a non-destructive way of taking it away visually, but it's always still there. I haven't lost it, it's just hidden, right? A couple of things. First of all, you can always back up if you don't like it.
Like you mean escape? Like
Control Z or Command Z is your backup. You can also find it up here, I believe it's Edit, Undo, right here. Undo whatever I did prior to that. You can also, the reason I like to use masks is because then I can use a brush tool and I can just brush that right back in to the degree I want. Sometimes I will take it away intentionally, take away a block of detail, and then I'll brush in the way that I want it to be so that it's perfect. The masks happen down here. This is your mask tool right here, and you can apply it to any layer, but you select an area first. Well, actually, you don't have to select an area first. You can start off with, let's say that I don't have a mask. I can start off by just giving it a mask and then brushing on there. Oh, I already applied that one, so now it's gone. Let's fix that first. Well, let's delete it here so it's not applied. Okay, so here's my whole thing. If I apply a mask, white is showing everything right. If I inverse that, which is Command or Control I, it just flips the color. Then everything is hidden. And sometimes you want to start with black, and sometimes you want to start with white, and you want to either brush in your detail or brush away your detail, right? And so you're using black and white to just reveal or conceal. In this case, I'll start revealing, right? But of course, as we already learned, if I hold down Shift and click on it, it's going to hide my mask so that I can just see things as they are. And if I come back and I select my subject like that, I'm going to find that I am a happier camper with the selection that it has done. It does a really good job, that subject selection tool. And I will say that, let me just show this. When I'm using it, I have this option up here of clicking Select Subject. It does a better job than if I click on the subject. It just does a little better. Sometimes if I click on the subject, it'll still have a little bit of a white glow around the edge, right? And if I click on Select Subject, it usually tightens that. Now, let's see, that's probably a lesson for next time. Yeah, let me save that. If we have a poor selection and it's not quite where we want it, there's some ways that we can improve it and make it better. So we'll get into that next time. Okay, the next tool our dodge, blur, and burn tools. Let's see, this one is our blur tool. That will, of course, take, sometimes you'll bring in a detail like a pupil from another picture and put it on this one, and one of them will be blurrier than the other, right? One of them will be sharp and crisp, and you put that right over the top of a blurry face, and it's going to look photoshopped, right? But if you want to match the amount of blur, you can of course brush on with a blur tool, and you can blur something to the degree that it looks similar to the native file that you're working with. All of these tools are of course to just allow you to experiment and try different things. I'm gonna jump down here to the dodge and burn tools. These are great tools that are useful both on a mask and on skin. If I'm using burn, there are three modes. There's shadows, midtones, and highlights. If I picks shadows, then it's picking the darkest parts of those, and it's going to apply, let's see, oh, I'm on my mask, I apologize. It's going to apply a burn to just the darkest parts of that picture. You'll notice that it didn't really affect the whites of the eye as much as it affected the dark parts. That's what shadows would do. Mid-tones would, of course, adjust everything together at the same time, but you see it doesn't always have the same effect. It kind of grays it out. And highlights would select the lighter parts. Oh, I went back to selecting my, okay. Anyway, so it's darkening things, but it doesn't feel so natural. See how it's it's just burning it like I don't know if any of you have ever worked in a dark room, but the more you expose something, the darker and richer it gets, and it's applying that essential same technique here. Okay, the dodge tool is its opposite. So the dodge tool just lightens, brightens. Sometimes it's a great way to freshen things up, but again, that tool is a destructive way of doing what you can do with masks in a non-destructive way. So we're going to go into masks much more deeply next time, but for example, to do the same kind of thing, I might grab a curves, which allows me to, right? Mask, I'm going to invert it, it's all hidden, and then use my brush tool to say, I want it to be that bright, but I only want it to be bright where I brush. And this is a non-destructive way of applying that burn or dodge, but in a way that I can say, okay, it's there, but I only want it to be 50%, or oh, I only want it to be 20%. It's much more easy to make additional adjustments without sinking away. And if I use the dodge tool itself, then what's done is done, and I either have to keep a copy of my original layer, or so I've come to avoid all of the destructive ways of working with a photo. I only use the non-destructive ways these days. But sometimes, depending on if you're an artist, depending on what you're trying to do, the destructive process can be a fun part of Photoshop. Okay, these are your pen tool tools. There's a whole series of them, ways to grab the different points and redirect them, and ways to draw in the pen tools. I think I'll save that. You've got your type tool, and this is just like Microsoft Word. You put in your type here. Right now they're all white, so you see it gives me kind of a Microsoft Word toolbar at the top here. And you can change the size. This is one feature in the later versions of Photoshop that I really like, and that is, I see that double arrow that it gives me when I roll over the T. I don't know if you can see that little detail, but if I click and drag this way, then it makes it bigger. And if I click and drag this way, it's just kind of a more automated way of increasing your type size. You can also go from presets like this. You can change the font and the font characteristics. Anyway, it's a lot like Microsoft Word, so I'm not going to go into a lot of details with the type. But just know that between type, now once the type element is there, using masks and smart things, you can of course, if you're trying to run your large type behind his head, right? You can layer these things now in such a way that it becomes part of it becomes another tool of art. Going back to blend modes, let me just throw this type up here and give it a different color. There's a number of places I can change its color, but let's just, this is not good design. I'm just doing this so you can see what's happening. But once again, I can come here with like overlay, and here I can see everything below it, right? But if I want to lay my type over the top of part of my image, these blend modes are a great way to do that. They have different effects depending on which ones you choose. So I definitely recommend playing with the blend modes. All right, we're going to hide that. Shapes, these are your standard shapes. They'll start off with square, circle, and triangle. The polygon can be however many angles you want it to be. believe you defined that. All right, here it's set at 5. We can make that a 15-sided polygon. And then it would, you can see here that it would create it at however many sides you want it to be. And then a single line or a custom shape. The custom shapes are predetermined shapes that you can choose from. I never have use for these, but I guess it's nice to know they're there. But if you need an elephant shape, there's an elephant shape. So, all right. And lastly, your hand and your zoom, very, very useful. I never use the hand from here. If you hold down the space bar at any time, it gives you the hand. And so while I'm working, I'm just constantly holding the space bar down, and it grabs the entire canvas and moves it all together at once. So it allows you, when you're working up tight, to work here and then work over on this other eye without needing to zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, right? There is another tool called the Navigator, which I don't see up here, which is intended to help with the same thing. Here's the Navigator, and it allows me to choose different parts from this little image here. Choose different parts of the image to zip to. So you can see that. And depending on how much I want to see. So there's multiple ways of doing the same thing. I prefer to use the space bar. If while holding the space bar down, I also click on Command, then it turns it into a zoom feature, which is the same as clicking. So space bar, and just moving quickly, I just use the space bar and the Command key. And then if I hold down the Alt or Option key, then it turns into the zoom out, right? So between the two, I can zoom in, zoom out. This is with Alt, this is just Command or Control, and this is adding Alt or Option. I wish Mac and PC would get along with each other so that we didn't have to name them different things. Their function is identical, but they put them on opposite sides of the keyboard. So you just have to reorient your mind depending on which one you're working with. Anyway, it's good to know that those are there. I never use them because I always use the keystrokes, but if you ever need to you want to show somebody around a part of the thing, it's nice to be able to select the tool and use it that way. All right, I've given you some guidance on the colors here. We've got half an hour left, and so I'm going to do just one more section here on the different, and I want to turn it over for some question and answer so that we can be a little bit more specific. But right here I have a variety of hidden palettes. They're just in a closed state, but these are palettes that I use all the time. These are found in the Windows tab. Every one of these is a unique palette that has a subset of tools for whatever it is you're trying to do. One of those, for example, version history. We don't need version history, sorry. Regular history is what I was thinking of. History allows, this takes all the steps that you've done. It's keeping track of every step and allows you to back up. So if you're not familiar with the Control-Z function, this is the same function, but it allows you to kind of say, oh, well, I want to go right back to the beginning, right? And decide where in the process, but in kind of a non-destructive way, in that you can jump back to where you were unless you do something. So if I go back to this brush tool and then I start a new action, then it forges a new path from that point forward. So I can't reclaim all of these that are ahead of it because it's going to start anew. In fact, I'll just do something. Let's take a brush, and I'm gonna brush on him this color, and now you see here that it's now, from that point forward, it's forged a new path for the history. And I can't reclaim it. So that is, of course, can be a destructive thing if you're not careful. Actions are awesome. I don't use them as much as I used to, but if you have, for example, nope, I don't use it that way anymore. I want to teach you the latest and best ways of doing things. So if there's a way that I used to do something, but I do it a different way. I want to teach you the way that I do it now. It's better. Actions are if you need to do like a 7-step thing to all of your layers, right? It's a great way to, you record you doing it to one layer, and then you put it on the new layer and you hit play, and it will take all of those steps to apply it to that next layer. So let's go ahead and just do one. I've got 2 layers of him, but one of them is going to be, let's see, one of them is going to be left facing and one of them is going to be right facing. All right, so if, for example, oops, oh, look at that. My mask is, I went back to a time when brush could not, oh, he's hidden. And let's go on him. Again, this only affects the layer, you're on. Okay, so I've got 2 layers of him. On the first layer, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create a new action. Action 2 is what I'm going to call it, and I'm going to tie it to a stroke. So every time I hit F11, it's going to do what I do. And I can name it if I want to. I hit record, and then I'm going to say, okay, I want to take this guy, I want to shrink him down a little bit. I want to skew the top part of him. That's 2 actions, right? And then I want to add a color overlay. Green, he's green, this is good. This is good design, by the way. And then I want to turn him upside down. Oops. Yeah. I need to zoom out. There we go. Sorry about that. Let's turn him upside down, reposition him. Okay, that's all I wanted to do. Let's go ahead and stop that action. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to come to my new layer, and I'm going to hit F11. Oops. Which is not a, I forget, I can't choose F11 as my action key because that's a Mac function. Let's go back here and we're going to change it to F10. We're going to edit this. Actually, let's go F9. My bad. Okay. And if I hold F9 down, then it's going to make all those same changes, but do you see how it did it in a flash, right? So if you got 300 images and you want to do the same effect to all of them, then you create an action and then you just and it does it immediately, and it will go as far as saving it in the folder you want and closing it down, so that if you have 30 images open, you just then go F9, 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 and it just goes does all of the changes you want, all the steps of the effects that you did, and saves them in the name that you told it to save. Okay, brush settings. So when I'm painting, I got a whole series of different brushes that I can use that simulate different real life brushes. They're awesome. If you're doing fine art stuff, there's a lot of great brushes out there. I recommend it. Here's my character palette. There's all the glyphs you would need. If you need variations from our standard alphabet, they're in the glyphs palette. I never use this because this is just a duplicate of this little guy right here, and it's always on my toolbar, so I only ever use that. But properties is very important. I find myself using properties all the time, but usually in regards to this will have to be part of next time. It's when you're deep into an action, properties allows you to continue to make adjustments, and we'll deal with that later. Let me back these up. Okay. Adjustments. So I don't do my adjustments from this palette. I do my adjustments from the layers down here because it takes, instead of doing it in a destructive way to the layer you're on, which is what this palette would do, it does it as an effect on top of your layer, and so you can make adjustments after that. So for example, if I were to apply this adjustment right to it, oh, it actually did it. It did it as layers, so we're good. These are presets right here, and you can download presets. You can look up online and download presets. If you're working a lot with the same type of photos and photography, you may want a certain effect on all of your photos, and presets are a great way to do that. I use the path feature all the time. Anytime I'm drawing something, it will create a path here and then allow me to use that path in various different ways. You can see previous paths that I've drawn. These are probably on different characters or different sizes. But like when I drew around his face, that would be creating a new path here, and it's just holding it here in reserve on its own layer so that I can adjust it later. And then for me, the most significant, and that's why it's the biggest, the most powerful tool of Photoshop really is the layers. Thousands and thousands of layers you can have, and the ability to make layers, compress them together into smart objects, and to put effects on top and below. This is where I would recommend throwing the bulk of your energy in terms of learning Photoshop. Really get to know the layers palette and each of the functions associated with it. It would be key in becoming a master of Photoshop, knowing what layer you're working on, and then when we get into later applications, when Premiere Pro and WordPress, they also incorporate layers into them, and it's the exact same as the way you're working in Photoshop. So it's good to know it just in terms of a base principle and concept, but I would say that the layers palette is the most powerful, which is why I have it always up whenever I'm working in Photoshop. I'm constantly working with my layers, and it's big and as big as life, whereas all of the rest of the palettes that I occasionally use, and some of these which I don't use, they are closed and hidden. I only open them as I need them. So, all right. That brings us to kind of the lay of the land of Photoshop, kind of the basis of how it works, what's what, how you get there, how you do it. It's not the specific techniques and tips yet. Our next class will be a little bit more specialized, but the next class wouldn't make sense if you didn't understand where some of these things were and how you do it. It would be too many questions.